Oh, that's
All right, thank you for agreeing to be the interviewed for this Spaces of Belonging Oral Histories project for the California History Center website at De Anza College. And your interview will be part of a database of oral histories of community builders like yourself, and that provide a kind of generational insight into history and social change and community. And my name is Steve Nava. I'm a sociology instructor at De Anza College, and I'm really happy to be part of this. And so the very first question for this oral history has to do with your own background. And I'll start with that question. Pull it up here. All right, so the first question, could you please tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you've been involved in, especially with the Guadalupe Demonstration Garden and some of your advocacy work?
okay. So let's see. Well, the activities or the main things that I'm involved with now. One, I'm a master gardener. And so we do lots of, well, so I'm kind of the lead for the Guadalupe Historic Orchard. That's under the flight path when the San Jose airport wanted to expand. They picked up and moved out houses, and then that used to be there, and then now it's park, but it's in different sections. Like there's a rose garden, there's a orchard, and the orchard's kind of being redone right now. And so I volunteer there. I do another, I've been lead for many years, and I just handed it over to someone, but I still volunteer there at Prusch Park on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
Two different, a high density and a international orchard there. And well, and then do stuff in the community garden, the Guadalupe Community Garden. That's the gardening kind of stuff. And then, well, there's also this urban growers network that's trying to bring together different organizations that do similar things. And I'm part of the community advisory council of the Urban Growers Network. Let's see, these are the things that I'm doing now. And then there's San Jose Nikkei Resisters. We're kind of based in San Jose Japantown and formed early in Trump's first administration, especially with the family separation, well, the Muslim ban, I guess it started early, and then there's lots of things we're trying to pay attention to. Then the last administration, we were really looking at San Jose Japantown and gentrification and building a sustainable Japantown, but now it's back to resisting. But oh, and I also have been meeting with people. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of donut economics. Have you ever heard of that? You know how there's a woman that wrote a book several years ago and called it Donut Economics. And, the typical, growth is required for the typical economic models. And so she came up with a new picture, and that's of a donut. And the sweet spot for things is in that donut, and inside the hole, that's not enough for people to live. That's not enough to sustain people. And then outside the donut isn't sustainable for the planet. So the donut is the instead of endless growth, a different metaphor, if you will, for how economic and sustainable and
Mhm.
social justice kind of model. So there's some people that are trying to do it in California, and some of us are trying to do that in San Jose. And
Yeah,
go-
that's an interesting point, because it seems as though you're right. It's like a lot of our social problems are centered on growth, without a sense of how to sustain it, in terms of the environment, but also in terms of human need. So
yeah,
in other words, like the needs are being superseded by the wants, in a sense, the desire for more wealth. And so I can see how that's related, back to the gentrification question. How do you see that playing out in terms of growth and gentrification?
as you're saying, that needs, or what's, it's a fine line between need and greed, for
Mhm.
example, and how much is enough, and how much, and who 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 can tell for themselves, and who, we really kind of have a society that's kind of based around fear and scarcity, and I think that's how we bamboozled lots of people.
Mhm.
But so this whole thing about building community seemed to me goes against some of that. And anyway,
So would you say the building community was the motivation for getting involved with the community garden work, in addition to the advocacy work?
it turns out it's been a really good space for building community, but but I think it's really, I don't know. I I, I think of it as um, part of sustainability, for us to know where our food comes from, for us to be able to do some of it for ourselves, get our hands dirty, and maybe stay a little grounded.
Hmm. Is there any follow-up questions that the students want to add for this question about your
Yeah,
work?
talking about sustainability, culture, and community and such, can you share a bit about more of your family history with that and how it influenced your values and such? And then also, if there was any specific part of growing up in, San Jose and Japantown and such that interested your gardening and all those sorts of activities you do.
Well, I guess both of my parents grew up on farms, and my dad grew up in Hawaii. His parents immigrated there from Okinawa, and my mom grew up in the Midwest US in Illinois on a farm. You can't even, well, it wasn't even a small town. The nearest town, I think, had one stop sign, no stoplights, but she wasn't in town. She was, on the
Mhm.
farm. And I I think we almost always had a garden, a vegetable garden, and like that. Um, I Let's see. I'm not sure that that answers your question, but
It does in a way, and I appreciate your answer. No matter what, you did a great job. Thank you. Following up about gardening and such, since you said that both your parents were born in different types of farms, right? One all the way in Hawaii, while the other one's in middle. You said Illinois, Illinois, right? Am I right about that? Yeah. So there's obviously, I feel like to a degree there's a, I would say, a cultural clash there. Did that ever, affect like how your perspective or your, the way you saw gardening and such change, or was it like it was just relatively the same way for both?
I'm not sure. The gardening was really, just hands-on, and it provided food.
Hmm.
Uh, but there were lots of things with culture clash and how people saw us, and that probably had more of an impact or influence on really uh, being interested in social justice and like that.
Got it. Okay, got it. Yeah. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does either
Ethan, did you want to unmute for the question 3?
Yeah, so when you were a child, were there any like significant places that gave you a sense of belonging, and or were there any places that made you feel connected or shaped your sense of identity?
I think where I grew up, so so I was born in Decatur, Illinois. So this was really a town. It wasn't like the small town with the one stoplight. It's not big, you know, but 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 it had like 3 factories, and you know, um, it was really a town. But we were really, I got the message there and in the farming communities that I didn't belong, um, that I didn't belong, that sometimes, often, that I wasn't wanted, but sometimes it was just curiosity. What are you? What are you? And, or, all the constant, where did you learn English? Or I don't know. And where are you from? And if I said Decatur, then I was obviously lying to whatever adult asked the question. And that was really, for a little kid to be so impertinent. Anyway, so that was all. And then, but the first time, I think my dad's youngest sister was getting married. And that was when our family went to Hawaii for the first time. And that was like a whole new thing. I mean, lots of people, like it. It's tropical. It's, but it was so different to me to not have people for the first time, let you know that you didn't belong, and you weren't wanted. It was just family there, and it was just well, the absence of you don't belong. And that was my first taste.
So, to go further into your past, tell us about your teenage years. What was it like for you to navigate that period of life? And were there particular groups or spaces, maybe cultural, creative, or community-based spaces that helped you feel grounded as a teenager?
The teenager question is kind of hard. I don't, I sometimes it's hard. That's kind of a hard time. And
Mhm.
you know, I think it would be great for people to feel grounded. And it seems like some people that are really into sports have that, or some
Mhm.
people that have, I didn't really have that, but was looking
Mhm.
and tried different things and was looking really.
Was there things that you did as a teenager that you feel like you're still doing in your adult life that kind of the seeds for that were in their teen years?
Oh, I was pretty active, you know, physically, and I try to still do that. You know, like I had a bicycle, I rode my bike everywhere, and mm, yeah, I was just, I guess, physically active.
Mhm.
The other thing, when I was a teenager, there were, now this is, it, it just felt like there was a sense of possibility in a way. This was a time of upheaval. There was the Vietnam War was going on, and people were resisting. Civil rights movement was going on, people were resisting, and it was, and so for me as a teenager, it was like you didn't have to just take what people told you had to take, because all around the country, people were fighting and saying, no, we're not going to go, you know, meaning they're not going to go fight in a war that they don't believe in, or we're not going to, you know, whatever it is, whether it's lunch counters or like that. And that was, you know, maybe if I was had a regular job and children then, and like that that all that was going on might not have seemed like it held so much possibility, but because I was a teenager and I didn't have those things, you know, it did.
Hmm. So do you feel like the spirit of the times has changed a lot since then? And how would you describe like nowadays in terms of the spirit of resistance?
Well, it seems like I kind of think of it, especially here in Silicon Valley, you know, like there's screws that feel like it's gotten tighter and tighter, you know, like it seems like they're like economically, you know, people are really stretched to
Mhm.
live here, and so that's changed things. And then there's, you know, I don't know if it could be that just from those times, like my teenage years, I just didn't have as much exposure, but I really think that there's a a much greater inequality, a difference in income, in, you know, like there there are statistics, and you guys probably have them closer to the top of your head than I do, but there, it used to be that it was a big deal. You would try to get corporation heads to not make more than, say, 11 times the lowest paid worker. And then
Mhm.
and then now, oh my God, it's
Mhm.
completely off the charts. And there's just that income inequality is so vast now. The it's like there knows no bounds. And so, and then the floor, it I don't know. There's not we're not set up to make sure everyone has enough, and isn't falling in that donut hole.
Mhm. Naaman has the next question.
Yeah. So how did transitioning from your teenage years to your adult years shape your participation or like your perspective on communities that mattered to you? And then what aspects of your engagement changed and what stayed the same?
Hmm. I think I started participating more. I started doing more things. I didn't move to San Jose till it was after I finished college, and then I came to San Jose, and I went to San Jose State for a couple of years and did a master's. And but it was all in that time, then just getting to know the San Jose community. And it was in there that I got in touch with people in Japantown, and things that were going on in Japantown. Um, I think I think I went on an early, maybe it was 1980 or something, Tule Lake pilgrimage. And we rode buses up to like near the Oregon border. And Tule Lake was a camp where where people of Japanese ancestry were put during World War II. And it had been one of the 10 regular camps, but then the US government tried to find out who was loyal and who was disloyal by asking these really ambiguous questions that were really hard for people to answer. And that didn't anybody that had a no in their answer to one of those questions got moved to Tule Lake, and it became you know, a segregation center with like more more guards, more martial law kind of thing. And so anyway, it was a long bus ride up there, and and lots of time to talk with people, the experience there, the long bus ride back. And then I started going to meetings and like that with the Nihon Machi Outreach Committee was just forming. And I think that whole effort, they didn't call it gentrification then. What did they call it? I don't I don't remember. Nihon Machi Outreach Committee was worried about changes in Japantown, in San Jose, Japantown, partly because both San Francisco and Los Angeles were kind of being bought up by Japanese corporations and their Japantowns were really being transformed. And San Jose's was really like family or legacy, small businesses and like that. It was very different. And but then Knox really started working with the whole redress reparation campaign and joining with the National Coalition for Redress and Reparations and like that.
Sorry, just a follow-up question to that. So throughout, the experience of going all the way up to the border of Oregon, seeing the camp and stuff, uh, how'd you feel about it throughout? Like, if you don't mind me asking, like, what were the emotions you were feeling throughout the thing that made you feel like, yeah, this is what I gotta do to, help out my community and such?
It's I guess it's I'm not sure that it I mean, I think it was personal
Personally.
in that it just seems wrong when anyone is not treated right.
Hmm.
I mean, at that point, I married someone whose family was incarcerated during the war. But at that point, I, you know, it hadn't touched my family in the same way because my family was in Hawaii and they weren't rounded up wholesale the same way that people were on the West Coast. So it sounds funny to say it was personal, although if I was alive, I would have been rounded up. But
Hmm.
but but you learned more about what happened and the effects on those people, and you saw how wrong it was. And then you started seeing some of the effects of of their children or their children's children, and it just seemed wrong.
Hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question that I forgot to ask earlier. I should have asked you, but can you tell us a little bit about your own identity in terms of your, race, how you see your race and your class and your, sort of national identity?
So my mom is white and European descent. And my dad is Asian. His parents left Okinawa and came to Hawaii to work in the plantations there. And Okinawa, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is a diversion, but Okinawa was taken over and colonized by Japan. It was an independent nation, an independent string of islands, although the name Okinawa is of the largest island, but there was it was a nation, and Japan took it over and um, does what colonizers always do, treat the people badly and try to make them lose their language and culture and become something else. And so there's still lots of remnants of that today, I think. But
Mhm.
anyway, so that's, and so I grew up partly maybe because I grew up, or I was born, I lived the first 9 years in Illinois. You know, race was the big thing because everyone, you know, you, you had to be white or you had to be black, and I didn't fit. My sister didn't fit, and so that was, and then when we moved to California, we moved to Southern California, and there it seemed like class was the bigger thing. Yeah, I
Mhm.
there was a lot more, seemed like there was a lot more wealth, or what seemed to me as wealth. And so you know, there were just lots of chances to feel on the outside. And but it really gives you an appreciation of of I think justice, or what, how things should be, or how, or when they're not like
Mhm.
they should be, or you know, like that.
Yeah. And I also didn't ask you about your age, because you know you mentioned that you were not, of course, alive during, or not in the camp or the incarceration camps. How old are you, and like what do you consider to be your main occupation?
Oh, I've done different things,
Mhm.
but I'm 71, and so now I do most I'm retired from you know, regular paycheck work, and 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 instead I do these volunteer things in these gardens and orchards, and then lots of community things, lots of, well, unpaid stuff that I mean that I kind of think of in a way like parenting is, you know, all of this, there's a lot of glue that holds things together or makes things work, but doesn't get acknowledged and doesn't get paid.
Yeah, so you see the value of that, you know, through your life, and you see the need for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And how different is it from your work that you were doing for pay, like your regular paid work? How different is life now from the kind of work you were doing before and then now?
You know, I did different things. You know, maybe one big chunk, I taught English as a second language for a
Mhm.
while, for a long time, to adults. And they were in different situations and like that. But that was a real important experience, you know, because so like when I was teaching in Castroville, that you were the English, you were the teacher, but you were the link to everything. So some of it was maybe social work, some of it was maybe you know, translation, some of it was just you were the tie to how things worked here. And so there were lots of other things that you well, that I ended up doing with that. So that was one chunk. Another chunk was I worked for IBM for a good chunk of time, and that was really different. That was really, but it let me see people in a office and corporate environment in a more human way. And it also gave me some, well, it was helpful for me for, it let me do the next chunk of stuff, that because I started getting some past a certain age, just like you get Social Security,
Mhm.
I have a little bit of pension. So that most places don't have anymore.
Right.
So, and then the next chunk of things, I worked as a gardener for I don't know, 12, 15 years, something like that. But it they called it they call it like fine gardening. I didn't do this stuff that the mow and blow guys do, but pruning, well, just everything else, anything else. So lots of my clients had mow and blow guys that would come and do that, and then I would come and do other things. So
All right. So Ethan has the next question. We're going to probably move a little quicker because I know you have an appointment. So we'll kind of have a speed round now.
okay.
Ethan.
All right, so over your lifetime, what were some like major historical events that may have like impacted your communities and your advocacy work, or maybe your experiences in San Jose?
Oh. Well, San Jose's been the backdrop the last, I don't know, 40 something years, but I think World War II had an effect, even though I wasn't born yet. Just because that carried on. And then the Vietnam, I guess we already talked about or mentioned the Vietnam War and civil rights. That had an effect. And then watching people, maybe it was in the 80s with Reagan, and kind of turn in on themselves and just try to think about themselves and get ahead. And then more and more, it seemed like greed was okay or just normal or something. And then, boy, this last while with Trump and this coming down hard on immigrants, I mean, right now, things are happening so fast. It's hard. It's hard to. It probably won't be till hindsight till we even really get a picture of all what's going on. But lots of things are unraveling fast, and I don't know. Just to say equity looks like has become a bad thing in this current administration, and that just seems wrong.
So you did answer one of my questions that I was going to ask. I'm going to skip to number 10, which is in terms of culture, ethnicity, and race, have you noticed any shifts in the demographics of Japantown, and how have these changes influenced your perspective on Japantown itself? Because you've been working around Japantown for how many years was it?
It- I guess 40
About 40?
or
Yeah.
so, if you just had a round number, maybe a little more, but you know, the whole reason that there's a Japantown is because people weren't welcome elsewhere. And it started out as a Chinatown because the two previous Chinatowns had gotten burned down. There was a Chinatown by, well, like where the Fairmont, it's not called Fairmont, Signia is now, downtown by Plaza de Cesar Chavez.
Mhm.
That was the last Chinatown that got burned down. And so then a guy named Heinlein let displaced people live there, and they had a fence around it and like that. He was a German immigrant, got lots of death threats. And so that became Heinleinville, that was mostly Chinese. And when Japanese immigrants arrived, that was where they came. And then Filipino immigrants, that's where. And so, I mean, so that's what it was and why it was there, because they couldn't live anywhere else. And now it's, I guess this is the worry, that with the big, those, the housing that they just built is really, they just finished it, and it's really quite expensive. And they haven't gotten tenants. They intended to have stores on the bottom floor, but they're asking really high rents. So they haven't filled any of those spaces. But it's, I guess that has been a concern with gentrification. If somebody can afford that, they won't really have an appreciation of this community that tries to look out for each other, that tries to, make certain things happen. And but yeah, so that's some of the concern, just because of what's just been built. And as legacy businesses go away, what will they be replaced with, and like that. The real estate prices are just so off the charts now. But Japantown, I've seen it be a welcoming place for lots of people of lots of backgrounds. And just like, well, with the Twin Towers, and even before that, was it Hayakawa who wanted to incarcerate Muslims? Was that? Anyway, but that certainly happened after the Twin Towers, you know, and the Japanese community has been really reached out to the Muslim community, and they've been very appreciative that well, when they were vilified so thoroughly, the Japanese community would, reached out to them. But it's changed, but it's still a community of people really trying to make a safe space for lots of different people.
Neiman has number 8.
Yeah, I was just judging by from what you were saying. They basically answered my question, but obviously, let me ask. I'll just ask it again. Since becoming involved with Japantown and its organization, have you noticed significant changes in the community, and how have those changes, such as the impact of COVID-19, affected your sense of connection or your work in the area?
COVID was really hard for lots of things, and that separation, where it looks like it was so hard was with families and young children. And the community in Japantown has started, well, doing their usual things again. They'll have this run, or this festival, or this, they've been doing started doing their typical things again, and people have been really appreciative that it's happening again in person, instead of, they tried to do, I think they tried to do an Obon over Zoom, and they tried to do, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so people are glad that it's happening again.
Would you say that it was relatively a harder time for you too, in general, with dealing with the stuff in the community and such?
I
COVID.
I think we're human, and we like to be together, or we like to, and Zoom has been great. Zoom has allowed access to people far and wide and like that. But it's not the same as when you're in the room together, or you have a meeting in person, and then people can bring, I don't know, snack, treats, something to share. It's just so different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But so it's coming back.
Yeah.
And Ethan has the next question, or 9.
Yeah, so as a result of maybe COVID or over time, but have you seen any legacy businesses close in Japantown? And how did that affect maybe your sense of community?
Mm. Well, it's, yeah, little by little. There's been a lot of legacy businesses that the children haven't wanted to take over. And I was just down last month in Little Tokyo, and there's a manju shop is it the third generation now? Really, it's been, and they're trying to pass it on to the next generation, and but maybe San Jose Tofu was the last one I think of that went away. But there's new ones. There's new ones that are coming, and new businesses like Roy's used to be a gas station and now it's a coffee shop and it's really a hub. And there's a place across the street that used to be a gas station mechanic and it's changed a couple of times, but now the guy that's running it really wants to be part of the J-Town community. I mean, so I guess maybe the difference is that these are small businesses rather than chains. I don't know if it would be the same if it was a Starbucks or if it was, I don't know, whatever, Chick-fil-A. Oh, yeah.
Naaman has number 11.
Okay. So, has your experience in Japantown changed how you define what it means to belong to a community? Has it shaped how you view other places or sparked a connection to new spaces outside Japantown that you'd like to share?
I don't know if it's changed, but really it's I think it's been really good. Part of it is UI Kai and Akiyama. You know, Akiyama does lots of exercise and fitness kinds of things. UI Kai has lots of programs and um it those those and maybe Roy's Station is kind of a hub with for community gathering, and so then it's like you know, to have that, then it's almost like a measure. You could look at other places. Do they have something? And sometimes, well, I guess the churches are um a, a hub too for the community, and then of course the museum is really important, but I don't know if it's changed how I think about it, but it gives it's a good example of what's possible and engaging people at different stages of life, I think.
Okay, thank you.
And let's see, the next question. Actually, I think I'm going to ask the question about the future of Japantown. So, what do you see as the future of Japantown, given what we've reflected on, or you've reflected on?
I guess that's what we have to, that's what we have to figure out. Some of, I mean, I think anytime what really works is relationships and and having things that facilitate lots of different relationships, I think is really important. If we can keep doing that, we can keep talking to each other and we can keep thinking about each other and each other's situations. And then hopefully we can keep a, a heart in Japantown. Whatever changes, whatever comes down the road that we don't expect or yeah, or don't necessarily want, but if we can keep, I don't know.
Yeah, so we kind of ran out of time, only have 1 minute left, but I just wanted to give you a chance to ask us any questions about this project or anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to share, anything that you feel is you kind of want to leave with us
I don't know. I wanted, have you done other interviews, Ethan and Naaman? Or, I mean,
No, this is our very first interview, and
first?
it was great. Thank you very much, by the
Oh,
way.
well, thanks. I was just wondering how, if it's made you think about something differently or
Yeah,
something, or
I think for me, the one thing that really stuck out was the camps you told me about, because I had no idea about any of that. And so, I was also gonna go to Oregon and such, so I'm definitely gonna see if I can visit the historical site or something whenever I get the chance. But yeah. Another thing was the groups. While I was researching, I actually did not know any of these. I actually went to Japantown maybe like 2 weeks ago. Just going there and then knowing about these groups is just really interesting and super cool to me. Yeah, thank you.
Mm, mm, mm,
For me at least, I kind of like I've watched a couple other interviews from other people who've been involved in Japantown. And I'd never been to Japantown, but for me, something is like I don't know, I myself I'm Mexican, and for me it's like I never go to like East Side, I guess, and I guess when I do go over there on rare like occasionally, I do feel a sense of community, and so I kind of learned like through the importance of hearing other people talk about their own community. I've learned the importance of keeping like those small communities alive, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I mean, really, it's what makes things so interesting and so, yeah,
Mm.
vibrant. Yeah. Nice.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for your
Well,
time on this.
thank
I really enjoyed it, Carolyn. And I appreciate Naaman and Ethan for being part of this. So this will be part of posterity. We'll have this record here for researchers or community members that want to learn more. And we might call on you again one day to come talk to us again. But we really appreciate your time today.
Great, great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good luck with your work.
Yes. Bye-bye,
You have
everyone.
a great day.
All right. Take
Bye.
care.
Yeah.
Bye.